In the climate-controlled bunkers of the United States Air Force, there is a concept called durable deterrence. It is the reason an AIM-120 AMRAAM is engineered to sit in a crate for 20 years, endure thousands of flight hours of vibration, and still go active the second it leaves the rail. It is a masterpiece of longevity, and it might be a strategic trap. For years, intelligence reports on the Chinese PL-15 and its successors have pointed to a curious defect, a significantly shorter operational lifespan. Chemical stabilizers in the rocket motors degrade faster. The electronics aren't hardened for decades of storage. To a traditional analyst, this looks like an industrial failure, a lack of quality. But for strategic planners in Washington and the Indo-Pacific, the different, more clinical reality is emerging. What if China isn't trying to build a 20-year missile? What if they have looked at the math of modern attrition and realized that in a high-intensity conflict, a missile's shelf life is the most expensive and irrelevant metric in the budget? We are witnessing a fundamental divergence in military philosophy. While the West pays a massive longevity premium for weapons that may be technologically obsolete by the time.
The contradiction lies in how we define waste. In the Western model, waste is a missile that doesn't work after 10 years in storage. For a Pentagon auditor, that is a failure of return on investment. But for a strategic planner looking at the Taiwan Strait in 2026, the definition of waste is different. Here, waste is excess durability, paying for 15 years of shelf life you will never use because the missile will either be fired in the first week of a conflict or rendered obsolete by next year's electronic warfare suite. This is the central question. Is China's shorter missile lifespan a technical flaw, or is it a calculated rejection of the Western exquisite model? Consider the US AIM-120D. It is a marvel of mil-spec engineering, designed to withstand the brutal vibration of carrier landings and decades of humidity. But this durability comes with a longevity premium, a cost in both time and money that limits production volume. China's PL-15 appears to take the opposite path. By utilizing good enough components and commercial-grade electronics, Beijing has optimized for freshness over longevity. It's a just-in-time approach to high-end munitions. For planners in Washington, this creates a chilling realization. While the US maintains a static, aging stockpile that requires constant billion-dollar life extension programs, China is operating a rolling inventory. To understand why a shorter-lived missile is a strategic choice, we have to look at the industrial tempo gap. For a Lockheed Martin or Raytheon engineer, the primary design constraint is longevity. In the US model, a missile like the AIM-120D is treated as a long-term capital asset. It must survive 20 years of temperature swings and thousands of flight hours of vibration. This requires specialized mil-spec components, semiconductors and sensors that are hardened to extreme standards. These parts have narrow supply chains and lead times that can stretch into years. China's PL-15 appears to follow a different logic, the freshness factor. Recent assessments of China's 15th five-year plan, starting in 2026, suggest a massive push towards utilizing commercial off-the-shelf or COTS electronics in high-end munitions. By foregoing 20-year durability, Chinese factories can tap into the same high-volume supply chains that power the global smartphone and electric vehicle industries. For planners in Washington, this is a nightmare of scale. While the US produces Tomahawks in dozens per year, China's good enough components allow them to manufacture thousands of missiles at a fraction of the lead time. If your missile only needs to last 5 years, you don't need the world's rarest hardened microchip. You need the one that's being stamped out by the millions in Shenzhen today. This isn't just about cost, it's about technological turnover. In modern warfare, the digital shelf life of a missile is often shorter than its chemical one. A seeker designed in 2010 might still be physically functional in 2026, but it is likely electronically obsolete against modern jamming. By building missiles with shorter lifespans, the PLA forces itself into a mandatory upgrade cycle. Every time a batch of PL-15s expires, they aren't just replaced, they are upgraded with the latest ASI radar seekers and software. China isn't maintaining a museum of 1990s technology. They are rotating a living inventory that is always aligned with the current electronic warfare environment. The most sober realization for NATO logistics officers comes from recent war games like Tidal Wave 2026. These simulations show that in a high-intensity Indo-Pacific conflict, the U.S. inventory of long-range anti-ship missiles could be depleted in less than 7 days. The U.S. has a surge problem. Expiring ones, their production lines stay hot during peacetime. They don't need to ramp up for a war, they are already running at combat replacement speeds. For the U.S., readiness means having a missile in a crate that works. For China, readiness means having a factory that is currently running. This creates a fundamental asymmetry in industrial resilience. If the U.S. loses its initial stockpile, it could take years to rebuild that exquisite inventory. If China loses its initial stockpile, its industrial base is already tuned to the high-volume, short-cycle production required to sustain a war of attrition. The Western model is a sprint to deterrence. The Chinese model is a marathon of replacement. If we strip away the prestige of mil-spec certification, we are left with a cold strategic reality. The West has been overpaying for a type of quality that no longer wins wars. For decades, the Pentagon's procurement model has been built on the Augustinian cost spiral, the idea that each generation of weapons must be exponentially more capable and therefore more expensive and more durable than the last. We have optimized for the 20-year crate. We demand that a missile sitting in a bunker in Guam in 2026 must still be 99.9% reliable in 2046. But in a world of rapid technological turnover, that 2046 reliability is a phantom value. By the time that missile reaches its second decade, its seeker will be blind to modern jamming, its software will be a relic, and its propulsion will be outpaced. China's short-life model isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign that they have correctly identified the digital half-life of modern warfare. They are not building cheap missiles, they are building time-relevant missiles. Planners in Washington are beginning to realize that durability has become a strategic liability. When you build for 20 years, you lock yourself into 2020 technology until 2040. When you build for 5 years, you are forced to iterate. You are forced to keep your factories running. You are forced to innovate at the speed of the commercial sector. The U.S. Replicator Initiative, finally gaining traction in 2026, is a frantic attempt to copy this homework. It is an admission that mass, disposable, short-lived, high-volume mass, is a quality all its own. In the next conflict, the revelation isn't that China has a shelf-life problem. It's that they've weaponized the very concept of an expiration date. By building missiles designed to be cycled out every 5 to 8 years, China has achieved what the U.S. hasn't seen since 1945, structural attrition resilience. For NATO planners, the math of a 2026 conflict is brutal. Simulations like Tidal Wave show that the U.S. depletes its most exquisite munitions, the long-range, high-durability assets, in less than a week. Once those crates are empty, the durable deterrence model collapses into a logistical vacuum. The U.S. industrial base, optimized for precision over volume, requires years, not weeks, to restart these complex mil-spec lines. China has solved this by making the surge their baseline. Because they must replace a percentage of their arsenal every year due to expiration, their factories are perpetually in a state of high-rate production. They don't need to ramp up for a war in the Taiwan Strait. They are already running at a tempo that would make the arsenal of democracy look like a boutique workshop. The second-order consequence is even more profound: the elimination of the maintenance tail. The U.S. military is currently drowning in its own long. The question for us isn't whether China's missiles are better or worse than their Western counterparts. In a systems-level conflict, that is the wrong metric. The real question is, if the next decade of strategic competition is defined by technological turnover and industrial volume, does the West's obsession with 20-year durability become its greatest vulnerability? For decades, we have relied on the golden century, the idea that our weapons are so refined and so durable that their quality would offset any advantage in mass. But as the U.S. Replicator Initiative struggles to field thousands of systems by its 2026 deadlines, And as the 2026 National Defense Strategy pivots toward a peace through strength model that prioritizes homeland defense, the longevity premium is finally being audited by reality. If China has successfully turned an expiration date into a forcing function for innovation, then the West is no longer just competing against a rival military, it is competing against a different philosophy of time. How do we redefine quality when the shelf life of a seeker is shorter than the time it takes to approve its budget? Think about the systems, not just the headlines. We'll see you in the next analysis.